In Unit 2, we are going to talk about different types of lines and angles. So to start with, parallel lines are two lines on the same plane that never meet. So for example, to the right here you can see lines M and N are never going to cross. So think about two lanes of traffic. The cars are never going to run into each other because the two lanes are always going to be parallel. Skew lines are two lines on different planes that do not intersect. So again, to the right, this new picture, it's also lines M and line N. But this time, think about going on the interstate and going in under an underpass. The traffic going above you is not going, you're not going to hit that traffic because it's on a different plane. So that brings us to parallel planes, are two planes that never meet. So it would be like holding a piece of paper above your book. They're two different planes, but if you hold them at the same distance apart the whole way across, they're never going to meet. So they would be parallel planes. A transversal is a line that intersects two or more coplanar lines at two different points. So for example, T is transversal to S and V. So here you can see we have lines S and V, and we have our transversal T. Interior angles are angles that lie between the two lines. So that would be anything on the inside. I like to label it as I. So it would be angles 3, angle 4, angle 5, and angle 6. And then exterior angles are angles that lie outside of the two lines. So that would be away from the two lines. So exterior. So it would be angles 1, 2, 8, and 7. So again, just to recap, we have the interior, and then we have the exterior. So think of being on the road or in the grass. So consecutive interior angles are interior angles that lie on the same side of the transversal. So again, we have our transversal, we have our interior angles in the road here. So that would be like angles 4 and 5. Or on the other side of the transversal, in the road we have angles 3 and angles 6. Alternate interior angles are non-adjacent interior angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal. So again, we have our transversal, and they are alternate interior. So non-adjacent, that means that they can't be on the same line. So, but they have to be interior, so that would be like angles 4 and angle 6, because they're both interior, but on opposite sides of the transversal and not next to each other. and angles 3 and angle 5. So can you take a guess what alternate exterior angles would be? Correct. Non-adjacent exterior angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal, but they are also, again, non-adjacent. So outside would be angle 1 and angle 7, because they're on opposite sides of the transversal, but non-adjacent, and then angles 2 and angle 8. Corresponding angles are angles that lie on the same side of the transversal and the same side of the two lines. So we have our transversal, and we have our two lines. So that would be like angles 1 and angle 5, because if you think about the x's, it's in the same place. So again, that would be angle 1 and angle 5, angle 2 and angle 6, angle 3 and angle 7, or angle 4 and angle 8. So think about the same spot corresponding. Now we're going to talk about perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines meet to form a 90-degree angle. You guys have seen this before. I think we talked about it in previous lessons. You've worked with right triangles and perpendicular slopes, but they form a right angle. And then vertical angles are always going to be congruent. We briefly talked about this before, but again, vertical angles, you're thinking the x. So angles 1 and 3 are congruent, and angles 4 and 2 are congruent. Two angles who form a linear pair form a straight angle, or again, 180 degrees. So if you draw a straight line, angles 1 and 4, angles 3 and 2. So again, we're thinking of our t again, our linear pair. Or we could draw our straight line on this one and have 4 and 3, or 1 and 2. So again, just to recap, the vertical angles are an x, and the straight angles, the linear pair, is a t in some sort of form. So in the following sketches, there are two different lines cut by a transversal that are parallel. And so now we're going to use our knowledge about vertical angles and linear pairs to fill in the measures for the other 6 angles in the sketch. So since they're parallel, we know that corresponding angles are congruent, and also that vertical angles are congruent and alternate interior angles. So to start with, angle C, since its vertical angle is 118, this is also 118 degrees. Angle ECB forms a linear pair with 18, so that's going to be 62 degrees. And again, its vertical angle here, DCG, is also 62 degrees. Down here, we have angle CBA is 62 degrees, so that means its vertical angle is 62 degrees. It forms a linear pair with angle CBF, so that is 118 degrees, and its vertical angle is 118 degrees. So notice how the corresponding angles are congruent, and the vertical angles are congruent, and the alternate angles, both interior and exterior, are congruent. So see if you can fill out this second one quickly. I'll give you a minute to work on that. So we have the vertical angle is 83 degrees. Vertical angle is 97 degrees. Actually, I'm going to start these in a different color. And then corresponding angles, since we have parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. So I know that these two are 97 degrees, and that these two are 83 degrees. So let that soak in. Think back to our definitions and what is congruent. And we'll have stations and a worksheet on this for practice. Now, so just to recap here, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So that means that alternate interior angles, this angle and this angle, would be congruent. And then we have our other alternate interior angles, which are also congruent. And then if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then alternate exterior angles are also congruent. So our exterior angles, alternate exterior angles, those two angles are congruent, as well as these two angles. And you can see the 125 degree is marked there, so you can see that they are congruent. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. So again, corresponding, they're in the same spot. So those two are congruent. Those two are congruent. These two are congruent. And lastly, these two are congruent. And lastly, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then consecutive interior angles are actually supplements. So consecutive interior angles are supplements, which means that they add to 180 degrees. So note that all of these sentences are based off of if two parallel lines. So now we're going to apply some knowledge to solve for x. So here we have consecutive interior angles. So those are going to be supplements. So 180 minus 51 is 129 degrees. So x is going to be 129. Number 6 here, we have alternate exterior angles. We know that those are congruent, so x has to be 94 degrees. And then we have alternate interior angles. And then those have to be congruent, so those are also 105 degrees. But we need to solve for x, so that means that we have 105 equals 2x plus 1, so 104 equals 2x. Divide by 2, we get 52 equals x. Number 8, we have corresponding angles. we know that corresponding angles are congruent. So we know that this angle has to equal 81 degrees. So we have that 81 equals 3x minus 6. Adding 6, we get 87 equals 3x. Dividing by 3, we get that x equals 29. Number 9, we have alternate interior angles. And we have that those are congruent. So we know that 8x minus 15 has to equal 5x plus 3. So moving our x's over, we get 3x, and moving my 15 over, I'm going to add to get 18. So I get x equals 6. Number 10, this one's a little different. It looks like a parallelogram maybe. So we still have our parallel lines. And then here we have our transversal. So we have consecutive interior angles, and those are supplements. So we know that those have to add up to 180 degrees. So we're going to take our 12x plus 4 and add our 5x plus 6 to give us 180. Combining our x's, we get 17x. Combining our 4 and our 6, we get plus 10 equals 180. So we get 17x equals 170. Divide by 17, we get x equals 10. So this stuff can be kind of fun, but a little tricky. So if you don't get it, make sure you're asking questions and doing the practice. Good luck.